Welcome to video number 32 that accompanies module 32 of the Learn to DJ free email course from Digital DJ Tips. If you haven't signed up for the course, you're not receiving all the material, please go and do so at digitaldjtips.com/join. It's completely free and there are 50 weekly parts. So today we're talking about loops. We're talking about how to use loops in your DJing, what those loop buttons mean on your DJ controller, and what you can do with them to improve the way that you play. If you want to see practical demonstrations, there's no room in this kind of 5-minute video to do that, but we do have an extensive video looking at loops in our full digital DJing course, and there's a link below this video showing you where to find out more about that. But for today, we're going to talk about why digital has made looping so easy, how you can take advantage of that without annoying the hell out of people. Looping basically describes when you take a section of a tune and repeat it over and over again. It first appeared with CDJs. CD players were the first thing to have the revolution of being able to loop. Obviously on a record you can't do it. Actually you can. And the way you do it on a record is by buying 2 copies of it, playing them side by side. As soon as one copy reaches a certain point, you whip over to the other one, rewind the first copy back, say 8 beats, and then as soon as the second copy has played 8 beats, start the first one and whip over to it. And then quickly get the other one back 8 beats. When that one's done 8 beats, flip back again. You can imagine that that's difficult. It's also great fun to get it right. I remember watching my brother and his girlfriend do that, really just wetting themselves with laughter at how funny it was when they'd mastered having a deck each and quickly swapping over. Back in the days when it was the only way you could do looping. Then CDJs came along, all of a sudden there was a loop button. And what you did then was you had a loop in and a loop out. So you're listening to your tunes, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, loop in, 2, 3, 4, loop out, 2, 3, and then it would loop that 4 beats. But you had to get your loop in exactly right, and you had to get your loop out exactly right, or your beats stuttered. There was some, it was obvious that there was a join. But if you got it right, it was seamless. Now that was a revolution. When it first happened, when CDJs first came along and when you could first do that, it changed it. It changed everything. It changed the DJ. All kinds of tricks were possible. And we're going to talk about those tricks in a minute. But you needed to get that timing right. But then along came digital, and all of a sudden, surprise, surprise, it became even easier. And let me explain why, because it's important you understand this. Digital DJing software will work out the BPM of your tunes. It would also, in order to work out the BPM of your tunes, it gives itself the information it needs in order to be able to allow you to loop seamlessly. Because in order to work out the BPM, it needs to know where the beats are. Once it knows where the beats are, you can use that information, and this is how it works. You're listening to your tune, it's chugging along, you think, I want to put a little loop in, so you press the loop start button, but there's another button there somewhere which says the loop length. And that length isn't in seconds, that length is in number of beats or fractions of a beat. So for instance, you can set the loop length to 4 beats, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you can set it to 8 or 16 or 32. Notice how they're multiples going up. And when you press loop in, it will automatically loop the next 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, whatever you chose, number of beats. And it'll come right back to the beginning as soon as it gets to the end of that. And because it knows the exact tempo of that tune, your loop is going to sound perfect without you having to do anything, without you having to do the timing right. Even if you touch the button a little bit too late or a little bit too early, saying, please start my loop here, it knows, and so it's going to loop that corresponding little bit too early or too late when it goes back to the beginning. So chances are you're going to get a great loops section. That's why digital makes looping so easy. But of course, if you have got a tune that your software cannot guess the BPM properly of, your loops aren't going to be perfect either. However, let's assume that you have a tune in there which your software has worked out fine, and you've decided you want to loop a section. Why would you do that? Why would you want to loop a section? Why do you want to use those loop buttons on your controller? And that's what we're going to talk about for the rest of this video. 3 reasons why it's a good idea to get used to loops and use them in your DJing. The first reason is the dirty secret of loops. It's the one that all DJs at some point or another, some more than others, use, and I certainly use it all the time in my DJ sets. And that is to loop a section at the end of the tune that's finishing in order to make that tune longer, to give you longer to mix into the next tune. And this is a really easy thing to do. You would normally set the loop length to 8, 16 or 32 beats, depending on what the music's doing at the end and how long you've got left. And then when the song's kind of winding down, the bass line's disappearing, everything's disappearing, and generally it's when you've got nothing left apart from a kick drum and a few other bits of percussion, you hit your loop button. That little bit of boring percussion that's not really going anywhere will now carry on playing forever. And that gives you time to mix the next tune in without that first tune ending. Now this can obviously get very boring, especially if you're doing it kind of as a rule, but certainly to make the outgoing tune just last long enough until the incoming tune has got some musical information going on that will take the dance floor's attention, just allows you to have much smoother mixes. The other way, of course, is to do that at the beginning of an incoming tune. So say you have a tune where there's kind of a few beats and then all of a sudden there's a big bass line and a break and some vocals and it's all going a bit mad, but you want to spend your time mixing that tune in. Well, if you can loop the first, say, 8 beats where not much happens, then that tune's going to carry on doing not very much until you take the loop off and allow it to play. So again, it's just a way of allowing you to blend tunes a little bit more nicely together. A second way of using loops is to highlight a phrase in a song or in a any musical piece that you have that you really like and you want to keep using over and over again. Now, a classic example of this would be, say, there's a really useful bongo pattern that you really like in a song. You can put that, especially this is useful if you've got 4 decks on your DJ controller. On one of the on the third or the fourth deck, you're DJing on decks 1 and 2. You put your record on deck 1, mix into deck 2, back to deck 1, back to deck 2. But on one of the third or fourth decks, you can put a tune that's got something that's really distinctive that you really like in it. As I say, a bongo pattern, a bit of percussion, something that you just want to mix in and out of your mix. Now, if you put that onto one of the decks that you don't normally use, and you set a loop, say the same thing, 8, 16, 32 beats of this pattern, and leave it going, you can mix in and out of that over the top of what you're doing on the other decks. Quick check in the headphones, hit the quantize button or the sync button to make sure it's all lined up, and just mix it in on its fader, mix it out again. It allows you to tie your set together with something nice. Now obviously you don't want a bongo pattern going for 4 hours behind everything you do, but it's just nice to have something there. Another way of doing that would be to have a vocal there, just a little vocal snippet that you really like. It's a real power user's trick is to take a vocal snippet from a song that you're going to be DJing with in a few songs' time, maybe a really big record, and have that waiting on deck 3 or deck 4, and then you can tease the crowd with this vocal just by mixing it in a little bit and then taking it out again for as long as it takes. Push them to the point where they're really expecting the tune to come in, but hopefully don't push them so far that they're starting to get really annoyed at you. So you have to play it properly. A final way of using loops is something that people do overuse a lot. Be careful with this for a couple of reasons, and that's what's called the loop roll. The loop roll is when, now we've already talked about the loop button having the ability to go between, say, one beat to 2 beats to 4 beats to 8 beats, but it'll also go below a beat, so you can go from 1 beat to half a beat, a quarter of a beat, an eighth of a beat, 16th of a beat. So we're getting down to really small sections of your tune that it's going to loop. And the classic trick, if you like, is to halve the length of the beat of the loop, halve the length again, because there's normally 2 buttons, one that says half and one that says double. And your screen will tell you, you're currently on a 4-bar loop, you press half, you're on a 2-bar loop, you press half, and so on, so all the way down to a 16th of a beat or whatever. That effect, all you've got to do is do it. Load a song up on your DJ controller and do it. Just do it. You'll hear exactly what the effect is. It just builds the tension up, and then when you're finished, you press loop off and it starts playing again. The 2 caveats here are, 1, if you overdo that, people were going to get really annoyed with you. And two, you need to let it off at exactly the right moment, or everything's going to go out of time and it's going to sound really amateur. So it's something you need to practice. You need to practice when you're going to do it at home, which tunes you're going to do it with. Does it really add to the tune, or is it just showing off, or is it just I've had a couple of drinks and I want to press a button? Make sure that it's something worth doing. And secondly, practice it hard so that you are used to letting go at exactly the right moment. And of course, if you're halving the length of your loop until it's a millisecond long, it's really, really difficult to then switch it off in time. Again, something to use sparingly. So thank you for watching, and I look forward to talking to you in part 33 of the course next week.